On December 4th, 2024, Brian Thompson, the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, was shot and killed on the street outside a Manhattan hotel. He was on his way to an investors' conference. The shooter waited for him, identified him, and walked away. Within hours, the story was everywhere, and the response from the American public was unlike anything seen after a murder in decades. People were not mourning the victim. They were trying to figure out who had done it, and why, and whether the killer had a point. This is not a story about a murder. This is a story about why that murder happened, why millions of Americans had complicated feelings about it, and what it reveals about the healthcare system that has defined life and death for 330 million people. Brian Thompson was 50 years old. He had been CEO of UnitedHealthcare since 2021. UnitedHealthcare is the largest private health insurance company in the United States. It is a subsidiary of UnitedHealth Group, which has a market capitalization of over $400 billion. Thompson's compensation in his final year included approximately $10 million in salary and bonuses. Under his leadership, UnitedHealthcare became known for something specific: its denial rate. The company rejected approximately 32% of claims submitted to it, the highest denial rate of any major American insurer. Patients who needed surgery, chemotherapy, mental health treatment, emergency care found their claims denied, sometimes repeatedly, sometimes after treatment had already occurred, leaving them with bills they could not pay. The algorithms the company used to approve or deny claims became the subject of investigative reporting. ProPublica and other outlets documented cases in which patients with terminal diagnoses had coverage denied. Families described watching loved ones die while fighting insurance companies for treatments their doctors had prescribed. The shooter left shell casings at the scene. The words on them read, "Deny, defend, depose." Those words are a reference to a 2010 book by insurance industry investigator Jay Feinman called Delay, Deny, Defend. His documentation of the tactics insurance companies used to avoid paying claims. The shooter knew the industry. The killing was not random. It was a statement. Luigi Mangione was 26 years old when he was arrested at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, 5 days after the shooting. He was an Ivy League graduate, University of Pennsylvania, valedictorian of his high school class in Maryland. He came from a wealthy family. He had no obvious financial grievance against the insurance industry. What he had, according to writings found with him, was an intellectual and moral argument. In the writings, later made public, Mangione described the American health insurance industry as parasitic. He described it as a system that profited from human suffering, that denied care to maximize returns, that had captured regulators and politicians and was therefore immune to democratic accountability. He wrote that he saw no path to change through conventional means. He wrote that he had chosen a different path. The country's reaction was split along lines that surprised almost everyone who covers public opinion professionally. Millions of Americans, not fringe voices, not extremists, millions of ordinary people, expressed online that they understood why someone might have done this. Not that they approved, not that they would do it themselves, but that they understood the logic. That they had their own denied claims, their own family members whose care had been blocked, their own experiences with a system that felt designed to frustrate rather than to heal. GoFundMe pages for Mangione's legal defense raised hundreds of thousands of dollars before being taken down. Sympathy cards and flowers appeared outside the courthouse where he was arraigned. The level of public antipathy toward UnitedHealthcare that surfaced in the week after Thompson's death was striking enough that the company briefly removed the names and photos of its executives from its website. Other insurance executives hired additional security. Brian Thompson's family is real. His children are real. His wife is real. No individual CEO controls a system of that scale. No murder is justified by a critique of an industry. And the justice system will determine what consequences Luigi Mangione faces. But the reaction to the shooting revealed something that polling data and political coverage had consistently underrepresented: the depth of rage in the American population toward a healthcare system that routinely denies people access to the care their doctors recommend, that makes patients fight for months or years for treatments that are already delayed. That generates billions in profit by paying out less than it collects. The United States spends more on healthcare per capita than any country on Earth. Americans pay higher premiums, higher deductibles, and higher out-of-pocket costs than citizens of any peer nation. And they receive, in exchange, a system in which insurance companies have extraordinary power to decide who gets care and when. Before Thompson's murder, that frustration was largely invisible to the political class. After it, for a few weeks, it was impossible to ignore. Congress held hearings. Insurance companies announced reductions in the use of certain AI-based denial tools. Coverage of the healthcare system's failures ran in every major outlet. Whether any of it will change anything remains genuinely uncertain. Luigi Mangione is facing first-degree murder charges. If convicted in federal court, he faces the death penalty. New York has already charged him with second-degree murder. He is, by any legal and moral measure, responsible for taking a human life. He is also, by the accounting of his own stated reasoning, a product of a system that produces this level of rage in people who feel they have no other recourse. The question of whether that system will change, whether the death of one man in Manhattan will accelerate or delay, or have no effect on the machinery of claim denial, is one that healthcare economists, policy analysts, and patient advocates are watching carefully. The question of whether Luigi Mangione had a point is one that millions of Americans have already answered privately, whatever they say publicly. And the question of what happens when people believe that a system is so broken, so captured, so immune to reform, that only extreme action can draw attention to it, that question has no